She built the largest family in Hollywood history. 3 of her children are dead. She rescued children from countries most of Hollywood could not find on a map. She testified before the United States Senate about the suffering of strangers. She worked without pay in refugee camps while collecting awards she didn't particularly need. And the home she built, the one with 14 children, 10 of them adopted across 3 decades from Vietnam, Korea, and India, was described by a son she loved as not a happy home. Not a healthy one. How does a woman who spent her entire life trying to save the world's most vulnerable children end up unable to hold her own family together? Her name is Mia Farrow. She is 81 years old. She has 14 children, 4 biological, 10 adopted, and she has buried 3 of them. In 2021, she described the man she spent 12 years with as the great regret of my life. She said she wished she had never met him. She said she wished she had never brought him into her family. She was talking about a man who is now married to one of her daughters. In the next 40 minutes, the child who died first and the question about that night her son has never stopped asking. The daughter she lost to a man she trusted with her home. And the 3 words one of her sons wrote about her publicly from a blog post that split the family in 2 and has never been answered. This is not a story about fame. It is a story about what happens when the person who gives the most is also the person who cannot see what is happening closest to her. January 1992. A mantelpiece, a stack of Polaroids. And the moment Mia Farrow understood that the family she had spent 20 years building was already gone. I will come back to that moment, and to what she did and did not say about it. She did not begin as a philanthropist. She began as a child who had already learned that the people you loved could disappear without warning. Maria de Lourdes Villiers Farrow was born on the 9th of February, 1945, in Los Angeles, California. Her mother was Maureen O'Sullivan, the Irish actress best known for playing Jane opposite Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan in the 1930s MGM films, a woman of considerable beauty and considerable discipline. Her father was John Farrow, an Australian film director who had converted to Catholicism with the ferocity of a man who needed an external structure to hold himself in place, and who directed films of some distinction while drinking in ways that strained the marriage beyond what it could quietly contain. Mia was the 3rd child and eldest daughter in a family of 7. The household operated under strict Catholic rules and strict Catholic expectations, Beverly Hills address, parochial schools, a God that watched everything and expected more than you could give. She was 9 years old when the polio outbreak struck Los Angeles County in 1954. Approximately 500 people were affected. Mia was one of them. She was placed in an isolation ward for 3 weeks, separated from her siblings, her parents, the Catholic routines that structured her days. She said, years later, that the experience marked the end of my childhood. She was 9. In October 1958, when she was 13 and at boarding school in England, her eldest brother Michael died in a plane crash near Pacoima, California. He was 25. He was a member of the United States Marine Corps Reserve. Mia was told at school and returned to England after the burial. And then, when she was 17, her father died of a heart attack. The family was left with little money. Her mother relocated to New York to act in Broadway productions. Mia began modeling to support herself and her siblings. By age 17, Mia Farrow had survived polio, a brother's death in a plane, and a father's death from a heart attack. She had no inheritance and no salary and was modeling in New York to keep her family solvent. She was not a girl who had been given things. She was a girl who had been trained, without anyone intending it, to absorb loss and keep moving. That training is going to matter. Keep it in mind. She was cast in Peyton Place in 1964, a primetime soap opera, playing Alison Mackenzie, a character whose fragility concealed something harder underneath. She was 20 years old. She became, almost immediately, one of the most recognized faces on American television. She met Frank Sinatra the following year. On the 19th of July, 1966, they were married. She was 21, he was 50. He was older than her mother. He had been married 3 times previously. He was, at that specific moment in American cultural history, one of the most powerful men in entertainment, a category that, in 1966, meant something more absolute than it does today. She left Peyton Place at his urging. She set aside the career she had built in the 3 years since arriving in New York. She became, for a period, Mrs. Frank Sinatra. While she was filming Rosemary's Baby, Roman Polanski's psychological horror film that would become a landmark of American cinema, the film that would earn her BAFTA and Golden Globe nominations, and the film that would define her legacy as a serious actress. For the next 50 years, Frank Sinatra's lawyers delivered divorce papers to the set. She was 23 years old. Her husband was ending their marriage while she was playing a woman whose body had been taken over without her consent. She finished the film. She married composer André Previn in 1970. Between 1970 and 1974, they had 3 biological sons, twins, Matthew and Sasha, born the 26th of February 1970, and Fletcher, born the 14th of March 1974. But Mia Farrow was not a woman who stopped at biological. During the same years, she and Previn adopted Lark from Vietnam in 1973, Daisy from Vietnam in 1976, Soon Yi from South Korea in 1978, a girl of approximately 7 or 8 who had been found on the streets of Seoul, and Moses from South Korea in 1980, a boy with cerebral palsy who the adoption system had classified as unlikely to find a home. Mia and André Previn divorced in 1979. Mia kept all 6 children. She was 34 years old. She had a post-divorce name she intended to keep, a career she had rebuilt after Sinatra, and 6 children who were entirely her responsibility. She was also, at approximately this same time, beginning the relationship that would define the next chapter of everything. By 1991, Mia Farrow had accomplished something genuinely without precedent in the history of Hollywood. She was the lead actress in a creative partnership with Woody Allen, a partnership that had produced 13 films across 11 years. Broadway Danny Rose, The Purple Rose of Cairo, Hannah and Her Sisters, Crimes and Misdemeanors, films that critics and audiences placed alongside the best American cinema of the era, films that were studied in universities, films that are still discussed as serious works. She had received 3 Golden Globe nominations from that collaboration alone. She was a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, traveling to places the United Nations needed visible witnesses, Sudan, the Congo, Darfur, and returning to testify in rooms where decisions were made. She was managing a household of 10 children, plus 2 adults, in Connecticut and New York simultaneously. She had adopted, across the previous decade, Dylan from Texas in 1985. Ronan, her biological son with Alan, born in 1987, and in 1992, within a single week, she would adopt both Tam, a blind girl from Vietnam, and Isaiah. 14 children, 13 films, one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Everything she had built, across 50 years of losing and rebuilding, was at its highest point. And it was about to end. In the family photographs from the early 1990s, there is a child who appears differently than the others. She arrived from Vietnam in 1992. She had been born blind. Her name was Tam. She is positioned in the photographs close to Mia, held in the specific way of a child who navigates the world by touch rather than sight. She is always smiling. She had a heart condition from birth. She suffered from migraines so severe that prescription medication was part of her daily life. She was 8 years old when she joined the family. She was 12 when the year 1992 happened. She was 17 or 20, depending on which family member is speaking, when she died in the year 2000. Moses Farrow, her brother, has written about the night Tam died in more detail than anyone else in the family. He says there was a fight. He says Tam witnessed something that night that mattered to what happened after. He says his mother's account of the cause of death is not accurate. Mia Farrow has not responded to those specific claims. That silence is something we will return to. In January 1992, Mia Farrow went to Woody Allen's apartment on the Upper East Side to collect their son. She had been to that apartment hundreds of times. She knew every room. On the mantelpiece, she found something that had not been there before. In the 18 months that followed that discovery, 3 things happened that cannot be undone. Mia publicly accused Woody Allen of sexually abusing their 7-year-old adopted daughter. Allen married one of the children Mia had raised as her own. And the first of Mia Farrow's 14 children began the path toward a death that her family has disputed in public for 25 years. What she found on that mantelpiece is where we go next. She went to Woody Allen's apartment on the 13th of January, 1992, to collect their son. She had done this hundreds of times. She knew the apartment, the layout, the rooms, the mantelpiece in the living room where Allen kept photographs and small objects. She had spent 12 years in that apartment. She had made 13 films with the man who lived there. On the mantelpiece, there was a stack of Polaroid photographs. She picked them up. They were nude photographs of Soon-Yi Previn, her 21-year-old adopted daughter. She left the apartment. She would later describe that day to Vanity Fair as the worst of her life. "I had to say out loud what I had seen," she said. She called her attorney. She called her friends. And then she returned to her children and began, with a precision that would come to define the next year of their lives, to explain what Woody Allen had done. The relationship between Woody Allen and Soon-Yi had begun the previous December, approximately 6 weeks before Mia found the photographs. This is not disputed. Soon-Yi was 21 years old. Allen was 56. What is disputed, and has been disputed, by members of the Farrow family publicly for more than 30 years, is almost everything else about that relationship. Moses Farrow, who was 14 years old when his mother found the photographs and who would spend the next 30 years thinking about what they meant, wrote the following in a 4,600-word blog post published in May 2018. "It was my mother who first suggested, when Soon-Yi was 20, that Woody reach out and spend time with her. He agreed and started taking her to Knicks games. That's how their romance started." He also wrote, "Soon-Yi was never Woody's daughter, adopted, step, or otherwise, and the claim that they started dating while she was underage is totally false." Soon-Yi herself, in her first and only extended interview published in Vulture in September 2018, said she regrets that Mia found the photographs the way she did. She said she was not a retarded little underage flower who was raped, molested, and spoiled by some evil stepfather, not by a long shot. She was specific about this. She had a master's degree from Columbia University in special education. She was, at 21, an adult making a decision that her mother experienced as a catastrophe. Mia Farrow's response was immediate and total. She told the children that Woody Allen was evil, that he was a monster, that he was the devil. She told them Soon-Yi was dead to us. Moses writes that this became a constant refrain, whether or not Woody was around. He writes that his 4-year-old brother Satchel, who now goes by Ronan, had absorbed the language so completely that he announced to one of their nannies, "My sister is fucking my father." He had just turned 4. One of the things the family photographs from this period do not show is Lark. Lark Song Previn had been adopted from Vietnam in 1973, the first of Mia's adopted children, the one who had been part of the family for nearly 20 years by the time the Polaroids were found. She had grown up in the household. She had attended the private schools. She had access to everything the Farrow name provided. In 1991, 1 year before the Polaroids, Lark was arrested with her sister Daisy at a department store in Danbury, Connecticut. Lark was 18, Daisy was 16. They had attempted to leave the store with a shopping bag full of Christian Dior lingerie, bras, garter belts, panties without paying. It was her first public appearance in the record. It would not be her last. On the 4th of August 1992, Woody Allen visited the Farrow family's country home in Bridgewater, Connecticut. The house was called Frog Hollow. Mia Farrow was not there. She was shopping with her close friend Casey Pascal. The people who were there: Moses, 14 years old, who had been instructed by his mother to watch Allen at all times; Dylan, 7 years old, Allen's adopted daughter; Satchel, 4 years old, Allen's biological son; Casey Pascal's 3 children, 2 nannies, Christy and Allison, a French tutor named Sophie. It was a warm, sunny day. Some of the children were in the TV room watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Woody Allen sat on the floor with them. At some point that afternoon, according to Dylan Farrow, Woody Allen took her into an attic and sexually abused her. Allen has denied this every time it has been raised, for 33 years. The investigation that followed involved 3 separate institutions. The Child Sexual Abuse Clinic of Yale New Haven Hospital investigated and concluded that Allen had not sexually abused Dylan and that Mia Farrow had probably coached or influenced the allegation. The New York Department of Social Services found no credible evidence to support it. The Connecticut State's attorney investigated and chose not to press charges, saying a trial would be questionable and fertile ground for defense attacks. Allen sued Farrow for sole custody of Dylan, Satchel, and Moses. In June 1993, Judge Elliot Wilk issued his ruling. He did not give custody to Allen. He found that Allen's behavior toward Dylan had been grossly inappropriate and that measures must be taken to protect her. He did not find the allegation of sexual abuse proven. He found that the preponderance of evidence indicated no abuse had occurred. Dylan Farrow has repeated her allegation several times as an adult, in an interview with Vanity Fair in 2013, in an open letter to the New York Times in 2014, and in a Los Angeles Times op-ed in 2017. Each time, the legal record has remained unchanged. Moses, who was 14 on the 4th of August, 1992, who was in the house, who had been assigned to watch Allen, who has spent the subsequent decades as a licensed therapist specializing in adoption trauma, wrote in his blog post that he believes his mother fabricated the allegation. "So many times I saw my mother try to convince her that she was abused," he wrote, "and it has worked." Dylan Farrow, who was 7 years old in the attic at Frog Hollow, has said the allegation is not fabricated. She has repeated it for 33 years. Mia Farrow has never stopped believing it. These 3 people, a mother, a son, and a daughter, were in the same house for most of the same years. They have 3 different accounts of what happened in that house. 2 of those accounts cannot simultaneously be true. I will come back to Moses's blog post, because the detail he includes about his sister Tam, the blind girl adopted from Vietnam in 1992, the one who is always smiling in the family photographs, is the detail that no one in the family has formally answered. And it begins with a fight. Tam Farrow was adopted from Vietnam in 1992. She was blind from birth. She had a congenital heart condition. She suffered from migraines severe enough that prescription medication was a daily part of her life. And according to her brother Moses, she struggled with depression for much of her time in the Farrow household, a struggle that Mia, Moses says, refused to address professionally. Tam struggled with depression for much of her life, Moses wrote, a situation exacerbated by my mother refusing to get her help, insisting that Tam was just lazy and manipulative. In 2000, Tam Farrow died. She was either 17 or 20, depending on which family member is speaking. The uncertainty of her precise age stems from the incomplete records of Vietnamese adoptions in that era. Mia Farrow's spokesperson issued a statement at the time. Mia's daughter died from heart failure over the weekend. She had a weak heart. She died of cardiac arrest. 21 years later, in 2021, Mia Farrow offered a second account on Twitter, in a statement she said was meant to refute vicious rumors. She wrote, "My beloved daughter Tam passed away at 17 from an accidental prescription overdose related to the agonizing migraines she suffered and her heart ailment." Moses Farrow's account of Tam's death is different from both. He writes that before the overdose there was a fight, a terrible fight between Tam and Mia, that the overdose followed the fight, and that his argument about what the overdose meant rests on a specific, precise claim about Tam's blindness. My mother would tell others that the drug overdose was accidental, saying that Tam, who was blind, didn't know which pills she was taking. But Tam had both an ironclad memory and sense of spatial recognition. And of course, blindness didn't impair her ability to count. Read that sentence again. Moses Farrow's argument is not statistical. It is not legal. It is not even, strictly speaking, a direct accusation. It is a description of his sister that rests entirely on the specific precision with which she navigated a world she could not see. She had an ironclad memory. She had a sense of spatial recognition. She could count. He is saying she knew which pills those were. She knew how many she was taking. The witness to the fight between Tam and Mia, the person who relayed the account of that evening to Moses, was Thaddeus, their paraplegic brother adopted from India in 1994, who knew the details of that night firsthand. Thaddeus died in 2016. Moses wrote, "Tragically, he is no longer able to confirm this account." In November 2025, Moses renewed his claims publicly via Facebook. He said, directly, that Tam's death was a suicide. Mia Farrow has not responded to the specific claims Moses made about that night. The fight, the timing, the pills, the count. 3 accounts, 2 families, 1 girl who was blind and knew exactly where everything was. Lark Song Previn had been in the family for 35 years when she died. She was the first child Mia adopted. She arrived from Vietnam in 1973 when Mia was 28 and still married to Andre Previn and still building the idea of a family that could absorb the world's most abandoned children. Lark was part of that original vision. She was there for all of it, the Previn divorce, the Andre years, the Woody Allen years, the custody trial, the years after. Moses describes what those years produced, in his blog post, in a single sentence that is among the most specific and the most devastating in his 4,600 words. She wound up on a path of self-destruction, struggled with addiction, and eventually died in poverty from AIDS-related causes in 2008 at age 35. Lark Previn died on Christmas Day, 2008. The hospital wristband she wore when she died had the letters DNR printed on it. Do not resuscitate. She had signed the order herself. Moses, writing in February 2026 on Facebook, said, She died on Christmas in 2008 after living with AIDS for over a decade. She chose not to keep living. Mia Farrow's account, on Twitter, in 2021, says that Lark lived a fruitful and loving life with her children and longtime partner, and that she contracted HIV/AIDS from a previous partner. The Reverend Timothy Tighe, who spoke at Lark's funeral, said, "She had dark moments in her life, but she put one foot in front of the other and kept going." 3 descriptions of the same woman. The Reverend at her funeral chose the phrase, "dark moments." Her brother said she died in poverty and chose not to keep living. Her mother said she lived a fruitful and loving life. Lark was the first child Mia Farrow adopted. She was also the first child Mia Farrow buried. Lark's death in 2008 was not covered widely. It registered briefly in the tabloids and then disappeared. 5 years later, a woman named Dylan Farrow published a letter in the New York Times that would make it impossible for the Farrow family to disappear from anything for years. She was 33 years old when she wrote it. She had been 7 years old in the attic at Frog Hollow. I will return to that letter, and to the question it asks not of Woody Allen, but of the industry and the audience that had watched and said nothing. At the beginning of Part 2, I told you that everything about Allen and Soon-Yi's relationship is disputed except the fact of it. I want to give you the 2 versions as precisely as I can. Version 1, Mia's version, as she has told it consistently across 30 years, Woody Allen groomed her adopted daughter. He took advantage of his position in the household, the man who came over at 6:30 inches the morning, who read the newspaper with Moses, who made Dylan's toast with cinnamon or honey, to begin a sexual relationship with a young woman he had known since she was 7 or 8 years old. He was 56, she was 21. The power differential, in Mia's telling, is the point. The photographs on the mantelpiece were the evidence of something that had been planned carefully, in a home she had opened to him. Version 2, Moses's version, written in 2018 after 26 years of watching, Mia herself initiated contact between Woody and Soon-Yi. She suggested, when Soon-Yi was 20, that Woody take her to Knicks games. Soon-Yi had always been the child in the household, who pushed back against Mia most directly, who was least intimidated by her, and who paid the highest price for it. The relationship with Allen was, in Moses's reading, a way out. Yes, it was unorthodox, uncomfortable, disruptive to our family, Moses writes. But he draws a distinction between the relationship itself and his mother's response to it, which he describes as more destructive to the family than the relationship ever was. Soon-Yi herself says she regrets that Mia found the photographs the way she did. She has said nothing more specific than that about the day of the 13th of January, 1992. She married Woody Allen in 1997. They adopted 2 daughters together, Beshe and Manzi. They have been married for 27 years. These 3 versions of what the photographs on the mantelpiece meant have never been reconciled. There is no version of events all 3 people agree on. There is only what happened after. And what happened after is the part of this documentary that no one disputes. On the 23rd of May 2018, Moses Farrow published a blog post titled, "A Son Speaks Out." He was 40 years old. He was a licensed family therapist. He had spent the previous 26 years watching his family negotiate, in public and in private, the fallout from a single January morning in 1992, a morning that none of them had agreed on and none of them had recovered from. The post was 4,600 words long. It addressed Woody Allen's guilt. It addressed his mother's conduct. It addressed the day of the 4th of August, 1992, from the perspective of the only adult child present who had not subsequently become an accuser or a defender. And then it went further than any of them had ever gone before. Moses writes about what the interior of the Farrow household actually looked like, not the version that appeared in magazine photographs, not the version described in Mia's UNICEF appearances, not the version that had made her one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. The version he describes is specific. It pains me to recall instances in which I witnessed siblings, some blind or physically disabled, dragged down a flight of stairs to be thrown into a bedroom or a closet, then having the door locked from the outside. He writes that his mother once threw a large porcelain centerpiece at Sunyi's head during an argument. The centerpiece missed. The shattered pieces hit Sunyi's legs. He writes that she shut Thaddeus, his paraplegic brother, the boy adopted from Kolkata with polio, the boy who could not walk in an outdoor shed overnight as punishment for a minor transgression. He writes, "In short, it was not a happy home or a healthy one." Moses Farrow is not a reporter. He is not a journalist. He is not a filmmaker or a memoirist or a person who had been building a case for 20 years. He is a licensed family therapist who spent his career working with adopted children in trauma. When he looks at the home he grew up in, he is not looking at it as a son, he is looking at it as a clinician. And what he says about it clinically is, not a happy home. Not a healthy one. He also writes, and this is the part of the blog post that the media covered least and that matters most about his own grandfather, John Farrow, Mia's father. He describes John Farrow as a notorious drinker and serial philanderer, whose alcohol-fueled arguments with Mia's mother shaped the household Mia grew up in. He mentions that Mia told him she had been the victim of attempted molestation within her own family. He mentions that Mia's brother John, their uncle, is currently in prison on multiple child molestation charges. He mentions that Mia's brother Patrick committed suicide in 2009. He is not building a case. He is showing a pattern. He writes, "As I look at it as a licensed therapist as well as an eyewitness, it's easy to see the seeds of dysfunction that would flourish within our own home." Two people read Moses's blog post before the rest of the world did. The first was Dylan Farrow, who responded 4 days later. She said, "My brother is not a liar, he is confused." The second was Ronan Farrow, who called it publicly a false, vile piece of fiction. Not only is Moses wrong about Dylan, his piece is full of lies about our entire family. Moses has not revised or retracted a single line. The three siblings Moses, Dylan, Ronan, grew up in the same house, ate at the same table, attended the same holidays, shared the same rooms for most of the same years. They have produced 3 documents that cannot all be true simultaneously. And none of them is speaking to each other. On the 1st of February 2014, 21 years after the investigation at Frog Hollow, 21 years after Judge Elliot Wilk ruled there was no proven abuse, but removed Alan's custody rights anyway, Dylan Farrow published a letter in the New York Times. She was 33 years old. The letter begins with a question. "What's your favorite Woody Allen movie?" Before you answer, you should know. When I was 7 years old, Woody Allen took me by the hand and led me into a dim, closet-like attic on the 2nd floor of our house. He told me to lay on my stomach and play with my brother's electric train set. Then he sexually assaulted me. She describes what she remembers from the attic with the precision of a person who has thought about it every day for 26 years. "I remember staring at that toy train, focusing on it as it traveled in its circle around the attic. To this day, I find it difficult to look at toy trains." She describes what followed the investigation, the years of recounting it to doctors, the custody battle she was too young to understand. The moment her mother told her she wouldn't be in trouble if she was lying, that she could take it back, she writes, "I couldn't. It was all true." She describes what the years after did to her. An eating disorder, cutting herself, being terrified of being touched by men. Watching Woody Allen receive awards while hiding her panic until she could find a place to fall apart. And then she asks a question not of Woody Allen, she asks it of the industry. What if it had been your child, Cate Blanchett, Louis C.K., Alec Baldwin? The question that Dylan Farrow puts to Cate Blanchett and Alec Baldwin is not a legal question. It is not asking them to adjudicate the competing investigations, the Yale-New Haven findings, the Connecticut State's Attorney decision. It is asking them something simpler and more difficult than that. It is asking whether their willingness to work with and celebrate Woody Allen would have survived personal proximity to the allegation. Whether the ambiguity they found tolerable about a stranger's daughter would have survived it becoming their daughter. No one she named answered her publicly. The letter was read by millions of people. It was shared more widely than any document any member of the Farrow family had ever written. It did not change the legal record. It did not result in charges. It did not produce a conviction. What it produced was this. For the first time in 21 years, a generation of filmmakers, actors, and audiences had to answer, individually, in their own minds, whether they believed a 7-year-old girl who was now a woman. And what they decided individually, in their own minds, is something none of them has had to say out loud. In October 2013, 4 months before Dylan's open letter, and in the same Vanity Fair article in which she described the Allen relationship as one of the great catastrophes of her life, reporter Maureen Orth asked Mia Farrow a direct question. She asked whether Ronan, the child she had described for 25 years as Woody Allen's biological son, the child Allen had fought for in the custody battle, the child the entire dispute had partly been organized around protecting, was actually Frank Sinatra's son. Mia Farrow answered with one word. Possibly. No DNA test has ever been conducted. Mia has not elaborated beyond that word in any subsequent interview. Ronan Farrow, when asked about his mother's answer on Twitter, replied, "Listen, we're all possibly Frank Sinatra's son." He was 25 years old at the time. It was among the least serious things he has ever said publicly. Within 3 years, he would become the journalist who broke the Harvey Weinstein story. He would win the Pulitzer Prize. He would become, in the estimation of the institutions that give such things, one of the most consequential reporters in the country. He is, of the 14 children of Mia Farrow, the one who most visibly escaped. Whether he escaped the family or whether the family built him, whether what he does professionally, which is hold powerful men accountable for things they did to people who could not stop them, is connected to what happened in the house where he grew up, is a question no one in the family has answered directly. He has not answered it directly either. On Wednesday, the 21st of September 2016, Connecticut State Police found Thaddeus Wilk Farrow inside his vehicle in Roxbury, Connecticut. He had a life-threatening injury. He was transported to a hospital and pronounced dead. He was 27 years old. He was paraplegic from the polio he had contracted as an infant in Kolkata, India. He had been adopted by Mia Farrow in the mid-1990s, the same period in which she adopted Tam, Quincy, and Frankie Min. In the years immediately following the Allen collapse and the custody trial, he had been one of the 6 children adopted in the most broken years the family had known. The Connecticut Medical Examiner's Office conducted an autopsy and ruled the cause of death a suicide, a single gunshot wound to the torso. The vehicle was found in Roxbury. Mia Farrow lived in the neighboring town of Bridgewater. The distance between the two towns, at the point where Thaddeus was found, is approximately 8 miles. Moses Farrow, in his blog post, describes the location with different precision. He says Thaddeus committed suicide by shooting himself in his car, less than 10 minutes from my mother's house. 8 miles. Less than 10 minutes. The numbers are compatible. What they describe is a paraplegic man who drove to a point just beyond his mother's property line and shot himself in the torso. Moses Farrow had written, 6 months before Thaddeus died, that his mother had locked Thaddeus in an outdoor shed overnight as punishment for a minor transgression. Thaddeus was paraplegic when that happened. He could not walk. He could not leave the shed on his own. He was a child. Moses does not specify Thaddeus's age when the shed incident occurred. He does not specify the year. He does not specify what the transgression was. He specifies only that it happened, that Thaddeus was paraplegic, and that the punishment was Mia's decision. Thaddeus was also the person who witnessed the fight before Tam's death in 2000. He was the one who told Moses what happened in the house that night. He was the person whose testimony Moses has said he cannot replicate because Thaddeus is gone. 3 family members connected by 2 nights in the same house. Tam, in 2000. Thaddeus in 2016. Both deaths disputed, in different ways, by different people. Mia Farrow's 2021 Twitter statement about Thaddeus describes something she says she did not know was coming. My courageous son Thaddeus was 29 and happily living with his partner. We were all anticipating a wedding, but when the relationship abruptly ended, he took his own life. The official age in the medical examiner's record is 27, not 29. The 2-year discrepancy has not been explained publicly. Mia Farrow has not commented on it. 27 or 29. A shed. A fight. A vehicle, 8 miles from his mother's house. These are not dramatic details. They are administrative details, the kind that appear in reports and records and are then replaced, in the telling, by the larger narrative. The narrative of a courageous son living happily with a partner and anticipating a wedding. Moses does not dispute that Thaddeus had a partner. He does not dispute the relationship. What he has written across the years, across the blog post, across the renewed November 2025 claims about Tam, is that the version of the household Mia presents publicly and the version he witnessed are not the same household. He has never retracted this. He has never apologized for it. And in 2025, when he returned to the subject of Tam's death publicly, 7 years after the blog post, 9 years after Thaddeus died, in a vehicle 8 miles from their mother's home, he did not soften it. He said directly that Tam's death was a suicide. Mia Farrow has not responded to Moses's specific claims about any of her deceased children, not Tam, not Lark, not Thaddeus, with the specificity Moses's claims require. She has offered accounts, she has not engaged with the details. And 3 of her 14 children are buried. She is 81 years old. She still lives at Frog Hollow, the colonial estate, on 17 acres of woodland in Bridgewater, Connecticut, the same house where she raised most of her children. The same house where, on the 4th of August 1992, she was out shopping while 7-year-old Dylan was in the attic. The same house where, according to Moses, his sister Tam witnessed a fight before she died. The same house she has never left. This is what remains of the 14. Matthew, her eldest biological son, twin to Sasha, graduated from Yale and Georgetown Law, married a fellow lawyer, has 2 children, lives in New York City. He is close to his mother and stays out of the public eye. Sasha, Matthew's twin, graduated from Fordham, worked as an accountant, was divorced once, remarried a pediatric cardiologist, has a daughter, is now a stay-at-home father in New York. He is close to his mother. Fletcher, her youngest biological son, works for IBM, married a graphic designer, has 2 daughters, and lives in Connecticut. next door to Mia. He is described by those who know the family as protective of his mother to an unusual degree. Daisy, adopted from Vietnam in 1976, arrested with LARC in 1991, dropped out of college, had a son, is now settled, married to a musician, works as a construction manager in Brooklyn. She is living quietly. She does not give interviews. Dylan, who is married, who has a daughter named Evangeline, who writes young adult novels, who said publicly in a statement that she considers herself lucky that she is happily married, that she has the support of her siblings, and that her mother found a well of fortitude that saved us from the chaos a predator brought into our home. Quincy, adopted in 1994, attended college in Connecticut, appeared at a few red carpet events with her mother, lives quietly. Isaiah, adopted 1992, attended the University of Connecticut, was last seen publicly in 2012 when he accompanied his mother to the Time 100 Gala in New York. Nothing has been reported about him since. Frankie Min, adopted from Vietnam in 1995. She is blind, like Tam. She was named, it is believed, after Frank Sinatra. She has never spoken publicly. Ronan. We will come back to Ronan. That accounts for 9 of the 14. 3 are buried, Lark, Tam, Thaddeus. 2 are estranged. Soon Yi, who married Woody Allen in 1997 and has not had contact with Mia in over 30 years. And Moses, who published a 4,600-word account of the household and has not retracted a single line. 14 children, 9 present, 3 buried, 2 gone in a different direction. This is what a life of rescue produces when rescue cannot also be repair. I told you, in Act 3, that the Connecticut medical examiner recorded Thaddeus Farrow's age at death as 27. And that Mia Farrow's Twitter statement, published in 2021, described him as 29. 2 years. The discrepancy has never been publicly addressed by anyone in the family. It has not been corrected on social media. It has not been acknowledged in any interview. The statement that said 29 is still posted. This is not an accusation. It may be an error of grief, the kind of arithmetic that fails when you are writing in pain about a child you have buried. Parents do not always know the precise ages of their children in the moments when loss overwhelms precision. But Thaddeus's middle name was Wilk. Mia gave it to him deliberately after Judge Elliot Wilk, the judge who awarded her custody of Moses, Dylan and Satchel in the 1993 ruling. She named a child after the man who protected her family in its worst year. A woman who named a son after a judge, in gratitude for his precision, is a woman who attends to legal and factual specificity. The age discrepancy is 2 years, not 2 months. Not a transcription error of a single digit. 27 or 29. The record says 27. The statement says 29. No one has corrected it. Moses Farrow spent his career as a licensed family therapist, the specific branch of therapy that deals with the dynamics of adopted children and the families that receive them. He knows what those dynamics look like clinically. He knows what the research says about what adoption trauma does to children who do not receive appropriate support. He has sat across from those children as an adult professional and has tried to give them what they needed. And when he chose to describe the household he grew up in the 4,600-word document that split the family, that produced Ronan's response of false, vile piece of fiction, that produced Dylan's response of he is confused, that Moses has never retracted, he chose to use the language of his profession. Clinical, precise, specific. 3 words. I will come back to them. They are the last thing I want to say before the close. At the very beginning of this documentary, I told you about a moment, to the 13th of January, 1992, a mantelpiece, a stack of Polaroid photographs. And I told you I would return to what Mia Farrow said and did not say about that moment. Here is what she said. In the HBO documentary Allen vs. Farrow, broadcast in 2021, 29 years after she found the photographs, Mia Farrow described the relationship with Woody Allen in these words. I was over the moon happy. She paused. But that's the great regret of my life. I wish I'd never met him. And then she added, and this is the part that has been quoted less often than the rest. She said she wished she had never brought him into her family. That sentence is not the same as wishing he had not come. It is an acknowledgement that she was the one who opened the door, that she had made a decision, she, specifically, as the adult, to bring a man she loved deeply and trusted entirely into a home full of children who had already been abandoned once. She is not saying in that statement that what happened afterward was her fault. But she is not saying it wasn't either. The statement she made in Allen vs. Farrow is the most complete account she has given of what the Allen years cost her. It was made in 2021. By that year she had buried 3 children. She had lost 2 more to estrangement. She had watched one son win a Pulitzer Prize for investigating the same patterns of powerful men and silent institutions that she had tried for 30 years to hold accountable in her own life. The great regret of my life. She is 81 years old. She lives alone at Frog Hollow on 17 acres in Bridgewater, Connecticut, with her son Fletcher living next door. She has 15 grandchildren. She still posts on social media mostly about climate change, about political emergencies, about the state of the world's most vulnerable people. She has not posted specifically about Moses's renewed claims from November 2025 about Tam. She has not responded to the age discrepancy about Thaddeus. She has not responded to the detail about the shed. She posts about the things she has always posted about, the world outside the 17 acres. The world inside them she has kept, largely, to herself. Ronan Farrow graduated from Bard College at the age of 16. He won a Rhodes Scholarship. He graduated from Yale Law School in 2009. He became a television journalist. NBC gave him his own program. NBC then killed his investigation into Harvey Weinstein, because as his producer later testified, it reached the very highest levels of the network. He took the investigation to the New Yorker. He published it in October 2017. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 2018. He has said of Woody Allen, I cannot have a relationship with my father and be morally consistent. He has said of his family that Dylan was telling the truth, that Moses was wrong, and that his mother saved them. He is, of the 14 children of Mia Farrow, the one who most visibly escaped the household and made something of the escape. The question nobody has asked Ronan Farrow, not on the record, not in any interview, is this: whether the instinct that made him the journalist who broke the Weinstein story, who held a powerful man accountable for what he did in private to people who could not stop them, is the same instinct that was built in the house at Frog Hollow. Whether the child who grew up watching his mother try to hold a powerful man accountable in courtrooms, in custody hearings, in public letters, became the adult who does that for a living. Whether what he does professionally is connected to what he survived personally. He has not been asked, or if he has been asked, he has not answered. In the very first minutes of this documentary, I told you that one of Mia Farrow's sons had written 3 words about her publicly in a document that split the family and has never been answered. Moses Farrow is a licensed family therapist. He has spent his career treating adoption trauma. He knows what that trauma looks like, the specific shape of it, the specific damage it does, the specific things a child needs that a household can fail to provide, even when it means to provide everything. And when he assessed the household he grew up in, the one with 14 children, the one that appeared in magazine photographs and UNICEF press releases and Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world, he used 3 words. Not happy home. Not a happy home. Not a healthy one. That is the clinical verdict of the most qualified person in the family to give one. Mia Farrow has never responded to it directly. She has offered her own accounts. She has described her own love for her children in terms that are plainly genuine. She has buried 3 of them and described that grief in language that is plainly real. But she has not answered the 3 words. And Moses has not taken them back. At the beginning of this documentary, I told you something. I told you she built the largest family in Hollywood history, that 3 of her children are dead, that the man she spent 12 years with is now married to one of her daughters, that her accounts of how her children died have been disputed, in public, by a son who has not retracted a single word. And I asked you one question. How does a woman who spent her entire life trying to save the world's most vulnerable children end up unable to hold her own family together? I do not have a complete answer. Neither does she, neither does Moses, neither does Dylan, neither does Ronan, who broke the Weinstein story and has never publicly broken his own. What I have is the house. Frog Hollow, 17 acres, Bridgewater, Connecticut. The same house where the family photographs were taken. The same house where Dylan was 7 years old and there was an attic. The same house where Thaddeus was locked in a shed and Tam witnessed a fight. The same house where Ronan was a child who graduated college at 16 and became, as an adult, the kind of journalist who holds powerful men accountable. The house is still there. Mia Farrow is still in it. 14 children passed through those 17 acres. 3 of them are buried. 2 of them drove away and did not come back. 9 of them are living lives that, for the most part, they have chosen to keep private. And on the mantelpiece, or wherever it is that the woman who built all of this keeps the things she has not yet answered, the 3 words are still there. Not happy home. If you think there is something in this story you know about Mia, about the children, about what happened in the house and what it cost, write it in the comments below. Because this family kept its story inside for 50 years. And the people who know the most about it are the ones who are still not talking.